A lot of people saying hello in the chat, which is wonderful. So please, you can continue to do that. And as we go along, please use the chat to share comments or questions you may have. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end after Susie's presentation to have some conversation and ask questions and dig in deeper with any reflections or comments we have as well. So we are so thrilled to have with us today Susie Spikol from the Harris Center. And since 1993, Susie Spikol has been a naturalist for the Harris Center for Conservation Education, located in the Monadnock? How do you pronounce that, Susie?
Monadnock.
Monadnock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got
the
it.
Monadnock region of southwestern New Hampshire in the United States. As the community program director, she develops program opportunities and leads programs for people of all ages and backgrounds to have meaningful experiences with the natural world. Susie is one of this year's recipients of the Garden Club of America's Elizabeth Abernathy Hull Award for Excellence in Environmental Education. And when she isn't out following bobcat tracks with third graders or leading baby in backpack hikes, Susie writes and is the author of a newly released book for kids called The Animal Adventurer's Guide: How to Prowl for an Owl, Make Snail Slime, and Catch a Frog Barehanded. And I hear an echo on the line. And so I'd remind everybody to please mute yourselves if you're not speaking. Hopefully we'll have time for folks to unmute and ask questions at the end. So thank you very much. And thank you. Welcome, Susie. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll turn it over to you from here.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. Like I said, this is a big highlight for me to be able to talk to other people who are interested in environmental education and environmental community programming. And today it was hard for me to pick what I was going to talk about, but I like to think of this program as the power of lab girls, or the power to follow your heart. And so I'll go along, and Bethany, I'm guessing you'll collect the questions in the end. So, okay, great, thanks. All right, well, first, just to tell you a little bit about where I come from, this is a picture of the Harris Center. It's in Hancock, New Hampshire, which is very rural part of New Hampshire. And in fact, much of New Hampshire is still very rural. And we hardly have internet connection or thing like that. So I want to warn you if my connection gets a little wonky. It's not me, it's just my community. And also I have a couple of dogs. If they bark, I'm prepared to have a little water shooter that I spray them with, and that quiets them down. The Harris Center is located in a very tiny corner of New Hampshire. It's been helping people since 1970 connect to the natural world. And below in the photograph, you'll see our stated mission, which is a lot of words, but basically what we like to think of it doing is, hold on, I gotta go forward, is basically we like to say we help people fall in love with the place that they live in, the natural world. And that's what we do. And we do it in all different ways. And one way that we've been doing it over the last 50 years is we've been protecting land through land conservation easements and protection. And we've protected over 26,000 acres of wild lands. And this was done by landowners giving their land directly to the Harris Center and working with other conservation organizations like New Hampshire Audubon, the Nature Conservancy, and the Monadnock Conservancy. All of our properties are open to the public, and you don't need to be a member to go on them. They're just available for all and everybody. And that's a really important part of our mission. And if you ever come to Hancock, New Hampshire, I hope that you'll explore these areas and come visit me at the Harris Center. So over the last 50 years, not only have we worked on protecting contiguous properties, we created what we call a super sanctuary. So a lot of our lands connect, and that's so that animals like bobcats and moose and bear, these are what we call our keystone species, have enough room to roam. But what makes the Harris Center really different than any other land trust in the area is that we have always had a deep belief in having people on the land. So it's not just about the wild animals, but it's about getting people outside on the land. We like to call it hands on the lands or feet, boots on the ground, whatever you want to call it. We have this idea that nature should be a place for respect and reciprocity, and it should be open to the public. In one way that we work on making human connections or bringing people onto the land is we have a very developed education program in the local public schools. We work in 5 different school districts with over 30 different schools and about 5,000 to 8,000 students a year we work with. And it's really great because we have another belief, a tenet in our education, is that they don't have to come to the Harris Center to have a natural experience. The belief is that nature happens everywhere. So you just open up the classroom door and you go out into the schoolyard, into the community. And that's even if it's in one of our cityscapes called like Key, New Hampshire is one of our cityscapes. And we have lots of programs there, and they do a lot of bird watching and looking in the cracks of the sidewalk and things like that. Nature is everywhere, and that's really what we like to consider it. We like to describe our place-based programs as turning science inside out. So really getting kids from the inside in their classroom learning about science outside, making a local connection. And each class, each program that we teach, we have to connect it to the next generation science standards. Those are the standards that the United States schools use, public schools use to make sure that we're teaching science in an inappropriate way, I guess, I would say. But that's been really helpful for us, and it's been a great way for us to kind of have an added value to the schools that we work with if we can show that we're helping them meet their science standards. Besides working in local schools, we also offer hundreds of programs, public programs a year for people of all ages. And this is a picture right here from a Babies in Backpacks program. We call it Babies in Backpacks and Toddlers in Tow. It's for families all the way up for people in assisted living and memory care. This is a program we did with memory care, people who have Alzheimer and dementia. We had a person who was a bird bander doing bird studies, and we invited them to watch this and have an opportunity to see the birds up close and touch them. It was really, really exciting and very cool. I should mention that all of our programs, our public programs, the majority of them are free and open to the public. Again, another belief that we have is that you shouldn't have to pay to have nature outside experiences like that. So we do charge, and when we do charge for some of our programs, that money goes right into giving the instructor the fee. So occasionally we offer courses and we'll charge for those courses, but that money pays for the instructor. Another place that we're growing is we're adding conservation research into our programming, community science opportunities for people as well. And we do this through a couple of different keystone programs. One of them is a raptor observatory program, which is in full swing right now during hawk migration season, where we have a raptor biologist on top of a mountain counting all the raptors migrating. All that data goes into an international database that helps scientists figure out the populations of the birds. We have another program called the Salamander Crossing Brigades. This happens when the first rainy nights of spring in this area of the United States, we have these beautiful big black salamanders that cross the road. They often get hit by cars. We have volunteers that will come out and help cross them. And we've been lucky enough to even work with some of our cities and towns, and they close the roads that have high traffic of these salamanders. Those are just some examples of our conservation research programs that we have. All of our choices that I've decided to share grew out of my heart. So I have so many programs that I could talk about, but the one that I've chosen to talk about is one that I feel really connected to, is really strongly about. This is a program that inspires me, and I hope it inspires you. It's a program, it's an after-school program for middle and high school students. And it's for gender identifying girls. And it's designed to help keep this demographic connected and engaged with science, technology, engineering, art, and math, which I'll refer to as STEAM, through the lens of natural science. So if you ask kids to name a famous scientist, most of the time they'll name a white man. Here's a list of often who we get named, from Albert Einstein all the way to Elon Musk. And even in our culture of popular culture with movies like Despicable Me, our bad villainous scientists are often men as well, like Dr. Nefario down in the corner over there, and Bill Nye the Science Guy. So we see a lot of men. And this isn't just my experience as an educator of talking to kids, but it actually has been studied. In a 2018 study by Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, researcher David Miller repeated a study first performed in the 1960s. Pooling pictures of nearly 21,000 students from kindergarten to grade 12, the study's authors found that there was a perception, a shift in students' ideas. What happened is that when they're young, they draw pictures of scientists as male and female. But as they get older, as they hit middle school and junior high and high school, they start to draw the scientists as just men. So really only 3 in 10 children asked to draw a scientist drew a woman. That sounds pretty bad. This is the new study, the recent study in 2018, but it actually is an improvement over the 1960s study, when there was only 1 in 10 children that drew a woman. So we're getting better, but this isn't good enough. And this study really bothered me. When I ask boys and girls to name a female scientist, I usually only get 2 answers, Marie Curie and Jane Goodall, right? These are the same 2 women that were mentioned when I was growing up as women scientists, Marie Curie and Jane Goodall, and I'm 54 years old. So honestly, I think we could do better. And so I decided to think about a way that we could do better. And this also, you see men being portrayed as field scientists and environmental scientists, conservation scientists, usually are men. That's what we see in our public. That's what we generally think of. So there is a really prevalent gender discrepancy in how kids view who can be a scientist. And I also noticed in my work with students that when I would teach them in elementary school, I'd have girls that were really excited about what I was teaching, and they were totally engaged. They wanted to use the equipment. They wanted to get outside. They were very curious. They wanted to ask questions, share answers, do all the work. But when I met them again in high school or middle school, this is often what I got. Kids, girls that didn't want to raise their hand, they didn't want to use the equipment, they were willing to take a back seat to this. It was like these girls went underground. And this combined with some studies and statistics around the gender gap in STEM really began to bother me in 2016. I was really reading a lot. These statistics that are up on this slide are from the National Girls Collaborative Project. It just shows you the number of women in different fields of science. And even though that 33.8% are environmental engineers, that's still a lot of room to grow. And I deeply believe what's going on now for girls is exactly what went on for me. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a wolf biologist. I mean, like, that's what I wanted to be. If you asked me in 5th grade what I wanted to be, it was a wolf biologist. But there's actually no women in this line of work when I was growing up. There was nobody for me to look at. Large carnivore research is still generally male dominated to this day. So I began to think of this. If it's true that you can't be what you can't see, then I wanted to change that. I wanted to offer girls an opportunity to see amazing women who do science work, who do work in conservation, who do work in ecology, like Raewyn Grant, the woman holding up the baby bear. She is an amazing, and she's actually getting very famous right now. She's a National Geographic explorer. She has her own podcast. She has her own TV show. Great role modeling for women. And then right underneath it are 2 women that I've worked with, Lori Goodrich and Becca McCabe, raptor researchers from Hawk Mountain, which is the preeminent raptor research facility in the United States. And then up in the top corner, the woman holding the big bug in her hand, she's actually Corey Moreau, and she is from Cornell, and she's an ant expert. And E.O. Wilson, the top ant expert in the world, he came out of his retirement to have her manage her PhD, and she is taking off. She's really doing amazing. And then in the bottom is Amani Weber Schultz. She's an up and coming shark researcher who has a real interest in bio-inspired robots, which I think is really fascinating. And I want these names and other women's names to be household names the way that Elon Musk is a household name, or Charles Darwin. I think we can get there. I also wanted to recognize that in the rural area that I live in, opportunities for girls are pretty slim. There are programs like Lab Girls in urban areas, especially programs near universities. I wouldn't be surprised if Ithaca had a program like Lab Girls. Oftentimes, if there's a university involved, there's STEM or STEAM opportunities for girls. But in the rural regions that I live in, there's a lot of roadblocks. Number one being transportation. We're so far and spread out. There's no public transportation. It's hard for people and girls to get to where they want to go. I also want to share that where I live is really there's a lot of poverty. The majority of kids graduating from high school in this community do not go on to college. They join the military, they go into factory work, or they do a service job in the community. I don't think that there's role models for them to see in their everyday world. And I wanted to have my rural students, the girls, have opportunities that help close the gender gap, give them role models to look at, and have a chance to compete and succeed in this world that we're living in, this new world that we live in. So I started Lab Girls with some seed money from a very competitive grant, which is a whole crazy story. One day I'll have to tell you all. This was designed to help middle and high school girls gain hands-on experiences with materials, equipment, research, and this was really important for me, meet role models in the STEAM and natural science field. So the way it works is we meet after school at the middle school. High school girls are transported via bus or walking, depending on the location of the high school, as it relates to the middle school. The high school girls help the middle school girls do the work. We do a lot of hands-on science experiments, a lot of natural science time outside, and the high school girls are sort of mentors. They're like big sisters, and it works really well. The middle school girls love working with the high school girls. I mean, all middle school kids want to be like a high school kid. So when they get an opportunity to connect with a high school girl, it really can inspire them. It also shows the middle school girls that doing science when you're a girl in high school is still really cool. And it's exciting. And so that it works that way. The high school girls benefit from this because they get the opportunity to hear the speakers that we bring in. So it's role modeling for them. They get to work with the hair center naturalists. So that's, again, another role model for them. And it gives them a chance to kind of step up to the role of leadership. The idea that they can be leaders, and it creates a community, kind of a sisterhood, I like to call it. The STEM professionals come from all disciplines of the natural science world. We have geologists, biologists, wildlife rehabilitators, energy engineers, wildlife experts in areas like we just had a turtle expert come and talk to us. We also wanted to make sure that we had art in there, because we felt like that was a really important, art in the big sense of whether you were drawing something or creating something that reflects an environmental ideal or idea, but also how you communicate. So writers, journalists, things like that. So we have a lot of writers and artists and filmmakers and photographers. They come work with us. Our speakers, we offer them an honorarium for coming to talk to us, but most of them do not take it. They return it back to the program. For them, they're just really excited about the idea of giving back, looking to inspire the next generation of scientists, mathematicians, engineers, artists, inventors, and dreamers, how we can have a different world. So I love this part. I really go out and find the speakers, and that has a lot to do with my social capital in the Harris Center. I've been at the Harris Center for over 30 years, so I have a lot of contacts. So when I reach out to an environmental biologist and tell them like what we're up to and where we are, most of them have heard of the Harris Center, and they're very, very, very happy to help out. So that's been really great. We make sure to take good care of our students too, because as I mentioned, the students we work with come from a high rate of poverty. And also there's a lot of drug use in the community that I live in. We're really hit hard by the opium epidemic. So some of these kids are being raised by grandparents. Some of these kids have parents. Some of these kids live in homeless situations. They might live in their car or trailer situations. So part of Lab Girls is an idea of caring for them. There's snacks, there's food, there's opportunity to talk to some older students, some Harris Center staff. We give them t-shirts. We check back in with them throughout the year. It's a safe place for them to engage, make friends, and imagine the possibilities of working and doing something for the environment. We offer in-person Lab Girl programs in the late fall and early spring in our 3 school districts in the Monadnock region. And we usually have between 20 to 30 participants. So we have usually about 20 middle school girls and then about 10 high school mentors. The sessions run for about 6 weeks, and we see girls who participate in the middle school end up staying on to become Lab Girl mentors in the high school. So we see them coming back, they stay with it, they're excited to be part of sort of a system, a cycle, I guess. And I wish I could tell you that this translates into more girls sticking with science at the high school and beyond. But as of today, we don't have that data for that. The the school systems that we work with haven't let us do a study. We really want to do like a longitudinal study and see if the girls who participate in Lab Girls continue on to take science courses at the high school that are beyond what's just required. And then do they go on, if they go on to college, are they going on to college to study something related to the environment? We don't have that data. We're working hard on trying to find a way to collect that data. But we do hand out evaluations at the end of each of the program, and the girls get a chance to respond. And I'll tell you, the most common comment that we get, and I know this is anecdotal, but if I added it up, it wouldn't be anecdotal, but the most common comment we get is something like this. It goes something like this: gee, I never knew I could be a geologist. In fact, I didn't even know that anybody could be a geologist. I never even knew that was a career until I was involved with Lab Girls. So I do feel that even though we don't have the data if they're going on and staying in science or pursuing environmental careers or environmental programs, I do think that it impacts them. And I guess I'm not just interested in what somebody might go on to do in college or university. I'm interested in how they're going to live as a citizen of this world. So if being involved in Lab Girls makes them a better citizen in the community that they live in, a citizen that's engaged with taking better care of the environment, then I feel like that would be, I would count that as a big win. So again, I'm looking and thinking about how to collect that information. We also offer online versions of Lab Girls during the winter and summer. So our winters in New Hampshire can be pretty rough, and school gets canceled a lot, or after school programs get canceled a lot. So we decided not to offer anything in the winter that was in person, and we decided to go with an online version. We did this especially when the pandemic struck and we couldn't offer in-person programs, and the response to Lab Girls online during the pandemic was crazy. We had 200 girls from all across the United States participate in our Lab Girls program during the pandemic. Since the pandemic has sort of stopped closing off schools here in the US, we still offer online programs. We get 40 to 50 girls pretty much. What's really great about this program is it is not just for New Hampshire then. We have students from all across the United States and some participants from Canada and even a few from Europe. The online version highlights women professionals who share their stories with the students on how they became who they are as scientists. So sort of their life story. We have incredible guests, and they can represent women from diverse backgrounds. So New Hampshire is a very white state. There's very little diversity in our state. So when I get speakers to come in, they're typically from New Hampshire. So because they got to travel to the school. And so they're what students are seeing is just represented white women usually. But the online version is amazing because that has a diversity where I can have scientists and artists and engineers and mathematicians from all over and representing all different backgrounds, showing a really diverse face of what it actually looks like. So we have a scientist, Charlotte Divitz, who does all of her squirrel research in a wheelchair. And she has a service dog who helps her. And I always just imagine how well that dog must be trained not to go after the squirrels. To somebody like Divya Anthram, who's down on the bottom underneath Charlotte. She is a taxidermist, and she identifies as a queer Black woman taxidermist. And she talks about that. And I think that's really important. It just shows in our small way that this is a very diverse field, and we need representation. We need people to know that. We need young people to see that so they can see themselves represented and see that they have opportunities. So ultimately, Lab Girls is about stretching the mindset of middle and high school girls by providing them with opportunities to see, hear, and experience STEAM through a natural science lens, build their environmental identity, create a community that is supportive and engaging. And I guess just to wrap things up with, I was nervous, so I talked really fast. I apologize, but I am almost at the end, and I'll take questions. But to wrap things up today, this might not be what you have been expecting for an environmental educator. Normally, I would, if I was doing what I normally do in a lot of my work, it would be a lot of outside things, and it would show you kids really outside. A lot of times Lab Girls is inside because it gets dark in New Hampshire pretty early by November. So we don't really have light to go outside. But I like to think that we bring the outside in. And all of our programs, kids are doing hands-on stuff. They're kind of experiencing science, materials, equipment, people, role models, each other. It's a chance for them to develop an environmental career pathway by creating a community of young adults who are inspired by the previous generation and can work to move the dial forward on ecological thinking, make opportunities available to understand rural populations. So that's really my goal for Lab Girls, is to get these girls engaged with natural science, to keep them engaged, to show them that it is okay, that it is cool to be interested in science, that it's important to be a member of this world when it comes to the environment. And I always like to tell them that it's part of their piece of the pie, that they have things to share, and that we need everybody at the table to solve the immense environmental problems that we have in our world. So I'm hoping there's some questions about Lab Girls. I love this picture. To me, this is like we're raising the bar. We're trying to do something different. So that's my Lab Girls story, and I can't wait to hear what you might think. And I'll just close this out so I can see everybody.
Well, a huge round of applause. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Susie. You covered a lot of ground and a lot of ideas very quickly. So I think, so I appreciate that you've given us a lot of time to now open up, you've really seeded the ground for a good discussion. And there have been a few questions in the chat that I've pulled out, and folks are welcome to think about questions you have or comments you'd like to share with Susie, and you can share them in the chat, or we'll be able to invite people to unmute and voice their questions aloud too. And so one of the things to start out with, there was a question from Melanie Mead, and Melanie was asking, are the high school girls given a training or a certification for leadership in STEM or STEAM?
Yes, such a great question. Yes, before they come to work with the middle school, I meet with the girls at their high school, and we go over kind of what the expectations are, so that they know that, they're not there to manage behavior. That's for the staff. That's for me and my lab girl leaders. They're there to really help get the girls staying focused on the experience and the science, to lead by thinking of questions to ask presenters. So we really spend, it's a 2-hour training, and they do get credit, community service credit for it. And I have written many letters of recommendation for colleges from lab girl high school participants who have been doing lab girls since middle school all the way up. And I got to say, that's been really exciting, that they value it enough to want to put it on their resume and to look to me to write them a letter that really shares that they've been contributing to something that's, like bigger than just, I don't know, volleyball. Not that volleyball is not important, it's different. So yeah, they do a training. It's not that long. It's just a 2-hour commitment for them before they come into the Lab Girls program.
Nice, thank you. And Lijun Liu was asking if she has a couple questions. One was if you've ever read the Secret Explorers series.
Yes, I'm a big fan of all of those types of books, Rebel Girls, 50 Amazing Women, and the Secret Explorers Club. And I like these books, and we have a library. I didn't put this in the slideshow, but we actually have a library that we bring with us that the girls can borrow books out of, that are those types of books that just have more women profiled, more women shown, women who never got credit for discoveries, like Marie Tharp, who discovered plate tectonics and was never credited for it. So we collect those books, we make them available to our students. So well, when Lab Girls first started, the first year that it started, that movie, now a kid's escaping my name, but the Women of NASA, what was the name of that movie?
Oh, Hidden Figures.
Oh my God, Hidden Figures. The local town theater let us come and show that as our last class of lab girls. And I had every lab girl bring somebody with them who inspired them. Some invited teachers, some brought family members, some brought friends or people that they've worked with. And it was extremely moving. By the end of that movie, the girls were standing up. I'm going to even cry talking about it. They were standing up, cheering. They left there feeling really like they could do anything. They really felt that way. So, we try to capture that with every Lab Girls program.
That's amazing. And this is so, I mean, this your work and what you've shared with us today in the Lab Girls example fits so well with the different outcomes that we're focusing on this week. And we talked about this a little bit beforehand. But just thank you for really integrating that into your presentation today, because this idea of, how do you build a sense of efficacy? How do you build a sense of, your social capital, but also your identity as someone who is interested in the natural world, who can go on and have a career, like you say, in the natural sciences is so critical, so fundamental. And I can see from the comments in the chat too that really resonates with a lot of the folks who are with us on the call today. So just again, thank you for sharing this with us, but also for the, for being able to bring it into action and to bring it into, to flourish, because this just sounds like, yeah, such a needed and such a really creative exploration of how do we do that?
How do we do that?
Make this happen?
I know it's a lot. One thing that's been really great about Lab Girls is the funding for it. So, I work for a not-for-profit, so we never have money. We always have to fundraise for programs, and Lab Girls brings in more money than any other program. It gets grants, it gets local donors, so people that have money that they want to give to something. It is really, I think it really touches people. It really hit a nerve it brings people in. It's the right time for a program like this in our community, especially I think with the numbers that just came out from our school district showing that a lot of the girls who graduate from the high school, the local high school, do not go on to college. So this is, and not that college is for everybody, but it gives kids opportunities that might not have. So there's a lot of emphasis right now on what we can do in this community to help empower females and girls reach their potential.
Yeah, so important. There's a flurry in the chat. There's a lot of comments and questions, but I want to pause so continue to add your questions or comments in the chat. I'll catch up with those. And I just want to invite, would anyone like to unmute and ask a question or share a comment or reflection? You can go ahead and raise your hand or unmute if that's easiest.
Hey, Bethany, this is Hadi.
Hadi, go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I really appreciate what amazing, like a talk and presentation. Sorry, I'm a little late. I joined you, but I really enjoy your presentation. Thank you for all of your efforts. Amazing work you did, and I am pretty sure you want to continue, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But the question is for me is, do you have any connection with the university and other program about the environmental education in New Hampshire or not?
Great question, Hadi. Yes, actually, just the University of New Hampshire, which is our state university, and New Hampshire, that's the big one. We just have one big university and then a couple of smaller ones. They just entered a grant with us. We're a partner on them to receive funding to expand Lab Girls into one of our cityscapes, Manchester. And when I say city, I mean, I'm from New York City. Manchester, it's a city, and I don't want to put it down, but it's not a big city. It's, you could drive through Manchester in about 10 minutes. It's relatively still smallish, and it's got urban issues and urban feel to it, but it's got a lot of kids. And we will be, if we get the grant, we'll be working with the University of New Hampshire has something called the STEM Discovery Lab, which is all about getting their students really involved and engaged with STEM. And this would be a way that we would work with high school and middle school students in Manchester and have them work with the STEM Discovery Lab and Lab Girls, and hopefully be able to open the doors up for the participants to have more opportunities through UNH and maybe even a university track for them. So we're waiting to hear. We'll find out at the end of October if we receive the grant, which is exciting. And occasionally we work with Keene State College, which is a small state-run university located about a half an hour from where we do most of our work. And they have a lot of professors that I draw on for Lab Girl guests. So we just had a professor named Karen Cangeliosa, who's a spider expert, and she teaches biology at Keene State College. And she did her presentation on her work with spiders, which was very exciting and a little creepy.
I'm really excited about your work. This way I have a lot of questions, but I want to just have another question. Do you have any focus on the food? Because, right now the big problem is about the food, because by food, we can also take care of the environment. This is why this is so important, because I saw in the STEAM, it is not too much like a program and focus on the food, for technology, but right now, food, it's so important in net zero, going net zero positive stuff. Yeah.
So
do you have any plan for that?
Yeah, we do have in our Lab Girls speakers, we have women that work in food sustainability and food systems, and they're often guests. And one thing about my community, which I didn't mention, is we are rural and we still have a lot of farms. So in New Hampshire, it's not unusual for families to be growing their own food, to be having their own meat that they're taking care of, to have chickens. So our food system in New Hampshire, in this part of New Hampshire, is still really kind of rural with people having access to homegrown foods. But we have had speakers and programs in Lab Girls all about the food system, especially as it relates to other areas and climate change. So great question, Hadi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Lisa Barron from Rochester, New York, and I'm curious as to your recruiting methods. And also, do you have enough seats?
Great question,
The
Lisa.
applicants.
Yeah, great question. So we do heavily recruit. We go into the schools. If we just sent it out as a flyer or something that was announced over the speaker for schools, we don't get signups. So we actually go into the schools. We do a slideshow that's all about getting a piece of the pie. We wear t-shirts, we go to events at the school, like they have club events, and we're out there for club events. We use our high school students to help us recruit at the high school, and they also come to the middle school. So recruitment is a really key part. If we don't do the recruitment, we've tried, if we don't do the recruitment, then we don't get the signups. And then in terms of, do we have enough seats? Generally, yes. We try to keep the number low because a lot of our programming is hands-on with a lot of materials and equipment, and that's really important, giving girls an opportunity to use like a Bunsen burner or a pH titration, to really have the opportunity to use their hands and on equipment. So we try to keep our numbers at about 20 to 25. And that's about what we get. We get about 25 girls. On the off chance that we have a big group, like we did right before the pandemic hit, we had a group, we ended up dividing it and offering it 2 sessions of it, so we could still keep that small ratio. The high school girls are more up to get involved. We don't have to recruit as hard there. They hear from it, they've seen it, they've participated in it, so they're on track to do it. So that part is feeding itself, which is exciting to see. But that was a great question, Lisa.
Ngozi, would you like to, I see your hand is raised too. Would you like to share?
Thank you very much for the presentation. This my question is quite simple. How do you manage girls who are not interested? That is, their level of interest is low. No matter how you try to engage them, it's obvious that maybe it's not their field or they don't just have interest. So how does she manage them?
That was hard for me to hear. I had a lot of feedback. Bethany, could you hear it any better?
I think, thank you so much, Ngozi. I think that, and Ngozi, you can correct us or modify, elaborate if needed. But from what I caught or what I heard, it sounded like Ngozi was asking about, do you encounter students who are not very interested? And like, how do you engage students or participants who are maybe not so engaged, not so, who are there, but a little reticent or hesitant or.
Yeah, Ngozi, that's a great question. Yes, we do. I wish I could say every single girl that signs up for Lab Girls is like ready to roll, super excited, and they're there to really like be engaged. But a lot of times might have girls sign up because their friends signed up, and then they're like, what am I doing here with all these nature nerds? But we just work with them, and because the group is relatively small and we have a lot of adults, we have the high school girls, and then we have usually I'm there, and then there's usually 2 other Lab Girl staff that are there. And this is a program where we get a lot of volunteers, women that want to come in and volunteer, who might have retired from field work. Like we have a botanist who volunteers with us regularly. So we can really interact with each girl on one-to-one and help kind of redirect. And I've got to say the high school girls are the best at it, because they are so cool to the middle school girls, that when the middle school girls see a high school girl being really engaged and excited about what they're doing and what they're seeing, and then most of the middle school girls come along, they get on the program. And when all else fails, we do have really good snacks. So, we try our best, and, some days some girls are more interested than others. So we just try our best. And I guess I'll just add one other thing. Sometimes it can look like a student is not engaged, and then you see them 2 years later and they'll say something to you, and I'll remember, this is a girl I remember who was like not engaged. She's like rolling her eyes, or, scribbling, drawing pictures when we're having conversations. And then I'll see her 2 years later and she'll say to me, Lab Girls was the best thing I ever did in middle school. So, sometimes it takes a while for something to go into a person. And I'm just going to go with the hope that that's what happens.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you
and
very
there is a
much.
lot of research that we and some of which we cover in the course too, about how these things kind of take some time to manifest, but there is research that shows, that by connecting students with these kinds of immersive experiences, that it generally leads to puts them on the pathway anyway to continuing toward the outcomes that we're hoping for. And I just wanted to voice, we'll have more time for folks to speak up. Sorry, goodness, I think I just cut you off. But there's a question that's come up several times in the chat, and kind of follows, I think, on what you were just speaking to, Susie, about challenges. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the challenges you've encountered in this program, and
Yep.
how you work through them, or where you're maybe finding it hard to move around?
Yeah, great question. So, a challenge is recruitment, making sure that we're getting time in the school to talk to all of the students. So sometimes what happens, and I should have addressed this when Lisa asked the question, is when we do a recruitment at a school, they'll send only the interested students. And we find that that doesn't really work, because we miss out on the girls that maybe aren't going to raise their hand and say they're interested. So we asked to meet with all the 5th graders, all the 6th graders, all the 7th graders, all the 8th graders. And that can be hard for a school schedule. So that is a lot of negotiating. But when we get all those girls, then we might have a girl who wouldn't self-identify as being interested, then take a release form, a sign-up sheet, and then join us. That's one thing. One thing we get pushback on is, why isn't there a lab boys? So there's lab girls, why isn't there a lab boys? And some schools have been less than excited to have us come in and just offer this for the girls. But and it is for all girls plus gender identifying girls. So sometimes we have non-binary students join us, which is great. When we get the pushback on why isn't there something like this for boys, or why can't it be co-ed, I usually go to the statistics that show that there is still a gender gap in careers and opportunities for girls when it comes to STEM. And then we offer, at those same schools that we do Lab Girls, we offer another club that is co-ed called Yeti Club, as in the big Yeti, the snowman. And that is an outdoor adventure club that is based around fort building and fire making and wild edibles and tracking. And that's been I guess I would say kind of a peace offering, like, well, we're still going to keep Lab Girls, but we're going to offer something that's open to everybody and still give everybody an opportunity to have hands-on time, to be with the hair center naturalists, so things like that. But the question about why can't there be a club like this for boys, it has been a challenge and sometimes a roadblock in some of the schools. And I guess the last challenge is finding enough speakers. Now that we're growing our club and it's getting bigger, New Hampshire is a small pool of women in these roles. And generally the professionals that we bring in to talk to the girls are 99% of the time women, because that's the idea, is to be able to see another woman doing a type of job that you might have only perceived as a job for a guy. So I'm running out of speakers because there's 4 lab grow programs going on in November and December. That's typically when we offer it after sports season is kind of wrapped up. Then I have to work really hard on finding those speakers and not burning my speakers out. So I need more scientists to move to New Hampshire, more artists who are interested in the environment to move to New Hampshire. So if you're thinking of a place to come to New Hampshire. Those are my top things. And luckily, as I mentioned, I don't have a financial problem because the program really seems to draw in the money, which is great.
Yeah, that was I'm glad that you were able to include that, because that was also an earlier question too that folks were wondering about. But yeah, certainly it can be challenging. I mean, and it points to the exact reason why this program is so important is because we need, we're hoping to see more women identifying folks in positions doing science or involved in STEAM, doing the arts related to the environment as well.
It's true. I'll just add too, like even in my realm of work, I'm classified as a naturalist. I work for nature centers, teach people about nature. The majority of people in my role are women, right? But the people that run the nature centers are men. So there's still gender gap even in my little world that I see. If you look at who's the director of the major New Hampshire environmental programs or environmental organizations in New Hampshire, I think there might be one woman at the head. The rest are run by men. Still room to grow.
Yeah, for sure. And so I see, Lijun, you've been really patiently waiting, and then Goodness and Jiaona Jue. So hopefully we'll get to those folks with their hands up, and then maybe have a little bit more time, but we are getting close to needing to wrap up. But Liu, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thanks. I really love your program, Susie. And I just wonder, as your center is located in New Hampshire, not so developed natural area, but I wonder if I live in the city, how can I make use of the space to help people know about nature education? As last week, I just developed a plan with my mates about how we can help the children from primary school to learn about the nature from a, almost developed era, man-made natural environment.
Great question, Lejin Liu. I love that. I think about this a lot. And I've got to say, I really feel like no matter where you are, whether it's rural or urban or suburban, the best thing to do is to find partners and community, because once you start to find partners, so you have a good idea of what you want to do, you need to find a partner, another organization, other people that want to connect with you and share a same idea. And then that makes what you want to do kind of bigger. It gives it kind of a validation, and it helps you leverage a little bit more. And so what I would suggest in starting programming, no matter where you are, is really look around and think about who are your natural partners? Who would want to connect with you? So maybe where you are, there's a park and rec department. Maybe they want to partner with you and help have kids come into their parks and recreation area and have experiences. So that would just be as an example. So I'm all about the partnership piece, which is why I'm the community programs director at the Harris Center. A huge piece of my job is about finding the partners and creating and developing kind of innovative ideas with unlikely partners even. So we partner often, this sounds crazy, we partner with a brewery. They brew beer, and we offer what we call Nature on Tap programs, where we talk about kind of natural phenomena in the world at the brewery. And it gives us a chance to connect with people and teach them about something that's happening in nature. And it gives the brewery a chance to have people come into their place. That's just a small example, very different than teaching children, but I'm all about the partnership, and that's what I would encourage.
really nice example, and also a nice reminder of just the incredible breadth of programming that you offer and that you oversee and organize there with the Harris Center. It's so inspiring to see all the incredible, the great creativity that you have in the range of programming that you offer. So Lab Girls was just one of those many programs that you took us through, which is great. Goodness, Dixon, would you like to go ahead in these last few minutes we have?
Yes, thank you very much. Susie, thank you for your thought and your explanation and the rest. It was very interesting. For we in Africa, and as especially for we in Nigeria, we have a peculiarity. There's no way we can compare the developed countries and the underdeveloped countries. If you want to carry out climate education and lessons like this, when you don't have a stable economy, when there is insecurity, when there are challenges, you find it difficult to carry out these programs, this climate education, this environmental education. Now, in our own case, where we have a knowledge, where we have advanced, at least we have understood some things about the climate and then the environment, and we are trying to make an impact in our communities. But knowing that most people don't even understand, basics, even education is not really known or impacted in our own area. Now, in this case, how can we be able to carry out such programs and such projects, knowing that there are regions where you find it difficult to even teach or even send children to schools because of the peculiarity? So in this case, how do I undo that? Thank you very much.
Wow, goodness, that's a really big question. And I wish I had a really good answer. And I don't. I guess, sometimes I think I don't teach a lot in our public school. We have a public school program that I mentioned, and I actually, I opted not to do that much in the public school because I feel really strongly about what I would say is educating through the side door or the back door, which means that I'm more about, when I work with young children, I'm more about playing and meeting them where they are in their play. And you might not have kids going to school as much, and maybe, the systems are challenging to get to the kids, but when you do find kids, they are playing outside. They're probably playing outside a lot more than people here, where kids are like stuck on their phone and their device because it's so prevalent here. But when you have kids outside playing, that's, to me, a really great place to start. And you can do kind of sideways teaching through play. So when kids are out and they're exploring, they might be, like making a dam or a river in the dirt after rain. That's a great place to play with them, but then also have them as kind of their curiosity of, why is this happening, and where's the water going, and what if there's stuff in the water, where does the stuff in the water go? So I don't know, goodness, if that helps, but I mean, I would start where the kids are, and where there are is in their play, especially when they're young. And again, I do really believe that when young children are opened up to connecting to the natural world, they become our future leaders. So it's like goes in their heart in a different way, and it stays with them. That's kind of what I believe. And I don't think that was a very good answer for you, goodness, but it's my best attempt. Sorry.
Yes, let me just come in again. When there is poverty, when kids are hungry, you can't bring them to a place to carry out education and the rest. So this is a very big challenge. because
Right.
I try to see how to organize kids, how to get them together. But when they are hungry, how will you bring them together? So that's a very big challenge.
I get that. I get that so much. I mean, even my girls, a lot of my girls are hungry too. They have, I mean, probably not to the extent that you see, but because my community has a high rate of poverty, some of the girls that I work with, you know, they'll come and they've had, yeah, not that much. So I hear you. You're right. You got to take care of that, the basic needs first. Good question, goodness, and really good for me to be thinking about. So I really appreciate that.
And thank you so much, Susie. Well, thank you again. We're just over the hour, so there are so many more questions that were shared in the chat, and I see that Chiaona Chiwe has their hand up still, but we'll have to transition now to the Chinese portion of the webinar, and so hopefully in that maybe the conversation can continue. Otherwise, folks, we'll have office hours tomorrow, and so you're welcome to join us for office hours where we can continue these conversations. But thank you for everyone who shared comments, either speaking out loud or through the chat, and your questions as well. And again, there's so much more here to talk about. So thank you, and thanks for your patience and understanding that there's more to discuss than we had time for. And of course, huge thanks again to Susie Spikol for joining us and for this incredible conversation, and also the amazing and inspirational work that you are doing. Susie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bethany. And I did see, it was hard for me to pay attention to the chat because otherwise I get distracted. So I didn't really look at it, but I did put my email in the chat. And if you would like to email me, I am all about responding. So feel free, if you didn't get your question answered, if you have something you want to share or say, send me an email and I will be responsive. And thank you so much, all of you, for your great questions, your insights, for doing the work that you're doing in all the places that you're doing it, because this is exactly what we need. And Bethany and Fish, thanks for having this course and inviting me. Really appreciate it. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. So thank you.
It was an
Thank you
honor
so much,
for
Susie.
us. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna have
And-
this Chinese session starting. And by the way, we already have this two amazing girls translate your slide into Chinese within like an hour. So yeah,
Wow,
it's really
that's great.
amazing.
So
We're gonna have
good.
their stage ready.
Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. All right, goodbye, everybody, and thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Susie.
Susie.
Good luck with the book.
All right, so I guess we're gonna stop the English session recording now.